Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hey,
How are you? How's everybody this morning?
Oh,
forming good. Forming good.
Hey, Pat, welcome.
All right, so today we're going to talk about continuation of what we talked about last time, which was farming, right? And so last time we talked about the different ways to farm, the different types of farms, the reasons, all that kind of stuff. What are we going to talk about today?
Farming part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. Even more farming.
Content is king today. So we are going to talk about content today in a way that makes sure that we know what we're sending, right? Because if we send a little note that says, "Hi, I'm Brett Duffy. I'm a real estate agent. I work your neighborhood. Call me and I can help you." How effective is that? If I send that every week for 52 weeks, am I going to get any business out of that? No.
No.
I might get a little bit because I'm me, but I'm not going to get a ton, right?
Right.
Because I'm not really showing anything of value. I mean, if everybody in the room sends the same cards that says, "Hi, I'm Brett Duffy," or "Hi, I'm Mike McCarthy," and so on, and that's all we say, how can you distinguish yourself from anybody else? Because what you have to assume is that if you're farming an area,
somebody else is too.
Somebody else is too, probably. So you've got to make sure that what you're sending is absolutely valuable information. So I think that's the number one thing we have to think about. It's got to be valuable. If the content isn't valuable, why would they look at it? I know people that farm areas that the people in those areas notice if the card comes out, doesn't come out in the right week. Like if it comes out in the first week of every month and the next month it doesn't come out that first week, that agent starts getting phone calls. Where's our neighborhood report? Because they want it, because it's that valuable of information. So from that standpoint, you've got to be providing something of such value that they are actually looking forward to getting it, because they don't just glance at it and throw it away. They actually look at it and take it in as information. So what's the number one thing that we can provide that's valuable?
Value of their house.
So if I send you a postcard that says, "I'd be happy to give you a free value of your home," is that going to entice you to call me?
No. It's what your neighbors' homes have sold for is the valuation that people.
Because I think that we have to be careful, because in the past, one of the number one farming tricks or tips or things that we sent out was the offer to do a market analysis on your home for free. Whoop-de-doo. Very few people actually give a crap about that now. Why? Well, because if they signed up, they get a Zestimate every month that tells them what their house is worth, right? And they believe that that's accurate. Well, maybe in some parts of the country it is, but here it's not. You're close. I wish it was on my house, because I get it every month on my house, and it just makes me feel like I've made so much money. It's not true, but still, I can pretend. So we do want to effectively help them understand the value of their home, but I think the old way of offering them a free market evaluation is not as effective as it used to be. I think we can still do that, but we have to prove that we are more valuable than the other thing. Because the interesting thing about the Zestimate when I get it is it sends me at the bottom of the email a list of recent solds in my area that it's using to help evaluate the value of my house. Well, I can tell you that there have been yet, not one of those properties has been even remotely similar to my house. Totally wrong school district, totally wrong area, totally wrong house, totally, completely different. And so that's why I personally don't put much stock in that valuation of my home, because I know that the data that they're sending me isn't right. doesn't make sense. So how can we effectively provide, what should we provide? We need to provide the data to help sellers understand value, right? So we have to provide that data. How can we provide that data? What area should we provide that data for?
For their area.
So remember we talked last time about farming size, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we each going to have to pick how big of a farm we can possibly work with, right? And so, you know, one neighborhood might have 700 homes in it, and one neighborhood might have 70 homes in it. And so if you're only doing a neighborhood with 70 homes in it, if you just provide the data on their neighborhood, what happens in the months that nothing happens in their neighborhood?
You have nothing to say.
Right? You're going to be SOL and not be able to send out a card because you got no activity. So you need to define an area, even if it's larger than what you're actually farming. Like if you were just farming your neighborhood of 70 homes, but you needed to pull in other data to make it work, you've got to expand that data set. So, you know, you might pull in neighboring neighborhoods that are similar. You might pull in, you know, everything within a half a mile of that neighborhood, or everything, you know, if you're near historic downtown whatever, you might pull in, you know, a radius of historic downtown whatever. Or you might pull in if you're near a country club or a golf course or a lake or some other defining type environment that you're going to use to help define that area of interest, area of properties that are going to affect and impact the value of the homes in the neighborhood or in the farm that you're farming, right? So you've got to define the area, you've got to have that area. If we just send a list of actives, pendings, and solds, is that enough?
No.
It's better than not sending them. To some extent, it's great, because here's the thing. In today's environment, I can take my phone and I can pull all the actives, pendings, and solds within whatever search criteria I want. If I'm sitting in my house, I can say, okay, within a mile of my house, what are the recent solds, and I can look at them, right? But that takes time for me to look at and try to figure out and do all of that. If I get a little card in the mail that just has a list of them, it's cut out all the time that I needed to do the research, right? And so now I can say, oh, wow, I didn't realize the house over on whatever Main Street sold for $425. That's awesome. So, you know, that gives you that ease of information. So really, a list is the basics. It's all you need. Now, remember last time we talked about the different media in which you can farm?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about you can mail stuff, you can email stuff, you can call, you can walk door to door. So here's my question. If I put a list of actives, pendings, and solds on a nice pretty postcard with some other, you know, good information or whatever on it, we can talk more about what that other information is in a minute, but let's just focus on this. And I put that on a postcard and mail it out. What could I do to make that more effective, to make it more pulling in? Because if I look at a postcard, I look at the information, what am I going to do with it?
Well, you need a call to action of some kind on the card.
I need a call to action, but even before a call to action, I can't possibly put all the information about these houses, right? If I just put a list of properties there, what about the pictures? What if I, as a consumer in my house, I get the card and I think, oh, I think that's that house. I wonder if that's really it or not. I got to go to the internet. I got to go to my phone. I got to figure out, how to find that house, and I'm going to look it up. And I'm going to look it up however I end up at it, whether it's Googling it or whatever, right? Maybe I have my favorite real estate site that I go to, and so I go pull it up on that site. Does that help you?
No, because they're gonna be.
Because they're going to be on
presented with
somebody
other
else's site, right? I mean, unless your site happens to be their favorite real estate site, which if you just start farming, it's not.
Mhm.
How do we get them to your site instead of some random site?
You put your site address on the card. Put a picture of the properties with the link to your site.
Well, and what you have to be careful of is, remember, we're not advertising properties. We're just providing data. So oftentimes, including photos is not really, it kind of crosses the line. It becomes advertising instead of just providing data.
Mhm.
So what we can do is, if we're on a postcard, let's say, we can put the web address, right? If we put the web address, what else do we put in from that standpoint? You want to put in your branded web address, so that's a good aspect. So you put in your branded web address. That puts them there. What else could you do that would be a little bit more geeky?
QR.
QR code. So you could put a QR link to your branded web address. Okay? What else could you do? Because those are kind of obvious. What else could you do that's not quite as obvious and will save you money in the future? Let's see, I'm trying to give you a hint. What were the other mediums we were going to use to deliver farming?
Email.
Email.
Email, right? So let's talk about, if we send them an email, we're farming, say, our sphere, or we're farming a group that we have email addresses for. What could we do? We could put the web address, right? We could actually put a link
Yeah.
to the website, right? But even better, we could actually link each property. So if 123 Main Street is available, we can link to 123 Main Street on our branded page so that they can see the pictures, get more information, and there are call to action buttons on the website, right? Request more information, schedule a showing.
What about the question of advertising?
But we're not advertising. We're just linking back so that they can get more information at that point. And the way our website works right now, we can only do that for these two, actives and pendings.
Mhm.
Anything that's sold, unless we sold it, is not going to show up. So you really just kind of do a list of those, no matter where you are. So in the email, we could do that. There's a gap here for a reason. Because on the postcard, what could you do that would change the impact of how they get to you and get to your information?
Well, we've already put our web address in the QR code.
What about your phone number?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have all that phone numbers and addresses and all the contact information on your postcard. Think of a call to action. What if I offered them something?
A lottery ticket.
Not a lottery ticket.
Poster.
Like a subscribe thing?
A subscribe feature. Excellent. See, this is torturous sometimes, but we get there. A subscribe feature. Offer them on the postcard, on the printed material, the option to subscribe to the electronic format so that they can get more detailed information should they choose to, right? So you can put in there the option to subscribe
Is that on the email or on the postcard?
on the postcard. Because the email, you're sending it to them, I mean, they are subscribed. In the email, you actually need to offer the option to unsubscribe.
Okay.
But technically, if they're getting the email, they are subscribed to your list. So you want to give them the option to subscribe to the email. Now, does that mean when they subscribe to the email, you're going to stop sending them postcards completely?
Mm-mm.
You could. It just depends on who they are. Okay? And you have to be careful how you position it. I know some people that position it, be green and get it via email instead of paper. Well, if you do that and they subscribe to your email, you better not mail them anything else, right? Because you positioned it that you're saving paper by the subscription. They're going to get mad if they, subscribe to the email and you keep mailing them stuff. So from that standpoint, be careful how you position that.
Is it frequent that people do actually see on the postcard, oh, let me go look up this and subscribe? I mean, do people really do that?
Well, and so how can we make it easier for them? So I know you can use a QR code for a website address, right? What else can you use a QR code for?
Subscribe.
Anything.
Almost
Subscribe.
anything, right?
Almost anything.
So I can actually use a QR email message so that when they click on that QR code with their phone, it'll pull up their email on their phone with the pre-written, hey, I want to subscribe to your newsletter, information, blah, 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 and they hit send and it comes to me. Now I've got an email, I say, great, this person's going to be on my email address, blah, 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 done. And in that email, you can say, make sure to provide your street address so that, if for some reason your database that you're mailing to is a farm that people you don't know, and you don't have email addresses, and you don't really necessarily even have names, you need to say, make sure and provide your street address and name and information so that I can, continue to mail you, make sure that I'm not mailing you postcards and emails and overwhelming, and let me know if you want one or the both or the other. And they can fill in their address and then send it to me. How do you think that would work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they
Depends on what part of town you're in.
How much work does someone have to do? How busy are they?
Exactly. And so the reality is they might see it the first time, they might get it on their postcard, and they might look at it and they think, oh, that's kind of cool. Then they get it the next time and they think, oh, this is good information. Now, at some point, if they think you're valuable enough, then they're probably going to subscribe to your email, which is how you're going to convert people that you're just mailing to people that you can now email and send higher level information. Because in the email, what's the other thing that you can do that you can't do in the postcard?
You can type.
What's the thing that we could send out that's data, market update information that is all fancy that Coldmaker does?
It's that,
Oh,
Can you show us stuff?
no.
That could be in there, yes. But
It's that, at the beginning of each month, you click on it, and there's a video, and you put the zip code in
Yep.
it. I don't know what it's called.
the Market Watch.
Yeah, Market Watch.
Because you can embed the video link in the email, and it's a great little video. It's, 30 seconds, 45 seconds long, something like that, and it's detailed information based on that part of town. Roswell and Dunwoody and Buckhead and Tucker and wherever, right? That is something that people will click on and watch because it's specific market information to their area. So that's definitely something you can add in there. Now, could you add that to your postcard? could.
Mhm.
You know,
Crowded.
again, it's getting crowded, right? I mean,
Still
how big
real-
of,
it's
how
still real
big of a
estate.
postcard are we sending? You know, I mean, it's like it's a postcard that folds out 12 times because every page has got a different QR code on it that's big enough that you can read from across the room. So, you know, there's some limitations to the postcard. There's some limitations to how much you can put on there. But you might choose to do one versus the other. You know, you might put the website address and not put the QR link to that, but put the QR link to the market update on your branded site, which is still going to get them to your site, but it's a specific landing page as opposed to just generally, you know, from that standpoint. So you put in there your actives, your pendings, your solds, your postcard, your email options. What else do you have? What other content? Besides the active pendings and solds, what we talk this market data, this is market data, right? This is stats. So we could include Case-Shiller. And I think that's valuable. Now, here's the issue with Case-Shiller. What's the best way to describe Case-Shiller or show Case-Shiller to somebody?
In person?
When you
Really
have a
in
listing,
Right? I mean, because you got to kind of go through the graphs, you got to go through all the stuff, and unless you're using a mega postcard and you're going to take up a lot of that postcard frontage, Case-Shiller is going to be real difficult to put in there. Now, you could put a little blurb in there about Case-Shiller, and you could do that in here as well, from the standpoint of you could put just, you know, a summary sentence or two, or you can copy mine that I send out, and give the update of kind of what, and another call to action, right? If you want to know more information about Case-Shiller, you know, give me a call, and I'd be happy to talk with you how it affects your home specifically.
And you can make a whole postcard about the data, Case-Shiller data if you want,
You
right?
could. And so
Especially if
you
don't
have to
a
look at
house to show them.
how often you're going to be sending something, right? Because if you're only sending something once a month, well, then every month you have new Market Watch video, you have a new Case-Shiller information, you have new actives, pendings, and solds. So all of that stuff is going to go on your postcard. Now, here's the thing. Should you do active, pendings, and solds one month, and Case-Shiller the next month, and Market Watch the next month, and then active, pendings, and sold the next month, and so on and so on?
You
I
need
think repetition is important for retention.
consistency.
I think repetition is very
Yeah.
important.
I think you have
Consistency of information is very important from the standpoint of, remember those people I was talking about, that the people that are you're farming actually call in if you're late sending out the postcard because they want to know where their data is. They want to know where the information is on the properties that have sold in their neighborhood. And because you didn't get it out the first week like you normally do, they're calling going, hey, what's going on? Because if you can get them to the point where they think your data is so valuable that they're waiting on it, then you've won. Because now you're the king, as the case may be. So you've got to do repetition. It's got to be the same thing. It's got to be consistent. Now, the reality is that you might send a postcard and then 2 weeks later send an email, and then 2 weeks later send a postcard, and 2 weeks, you know, alternate. You don't have to do just one or the other, right? Because remember we talked about when we were farming, it's not about making contact. It's about making contact consistently and frequently enough that you can be recognized. Why do people advertise on billboards? Remember we talked about using a billboard over the neighborhood if there happened to be one?
People see it over and over again.
Because people see it over and over and over and over again. But if you just did a billboard, it's not that effective, right? But if you do a billboard, and you do a mailing, and you do emails, and you do calls, and you do door knocking, and we talked all the different media last time. If you do all of those things, then they amplify each other and they become more effective. So I wouldn't say that email and postcards are exclusive from each other. I would say that they are actually complementary to each other. So if you do a monthly postcard and you do a monthly email offset by a couple of weeks so that they're not, coming out at the same time, then you have the opportunity to provide them more information. You have the opportunity in your postcard to tease a little bit about what more information is in your email. In your email, you can go into much greater detail about what Case-Shiller is because, you can write forever. You may not want to, but you can go into much greater detail, and you can provide more information. So I think that's why these have to play off of each other. But think about it from that perspective, that the information in one needs to complement the other one, but also be able to stand on its own. Because there are going to be people that only get the postcard, right? And there are going to be people that only get the email because you don't have their address.
Mm-hmm.
So the same sort of thing, you can tease in your email about, your mailing campaign. If you want me to mail these stats to your home, let me know.
You may have already mentioned this, but is there any way to get like a reliable email list of like your area?
Not really. You can buy lists off of all these listserv places, but ultimately not great, and it's going to cost a relatively fair amount of money.
But if you're going to be doing it every few weeks,
Yeah, no, and it's you could definitely from that standpoint. Most of the time, the places that you get it are your neighborhood associations.
Yes.
Or school directories.
Right,
places that you're not supposed to do. Right. So you're going to get emails from different places that you can get them. The most effective way to get emails, and this is like the curse of all things, but the most effective way to get all of the data for your farming area is to walk door to door and talk to people and do a survey. Do a survey and ask their information. Get their information as you're at the door. But have something valuable to provide them that says, there's a reason why you want to give me your information. It's not just because I'm nice and we had a good conversation. It's because every month I'm going to provide you with something that is beneficial to you and provides value to you. And if that's valuable to you, great. If at any time you decide it's not valuable, just let me know and I'll take you off the list. Okay? So what other content? We've talked about actives pending sold. We've talked about some market stats, because those are always good, right? And there's more stats you could have, right? So the Market Watch really kind of covers a lot of the stats, but you could present it in a different way. Your stats, you're talking about average sales price, you're talking about days on market, you're talking about, inventory levels, your numbers of solds and pendings and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, you can present stats in different ways, just depending on how you are comfortable with them and what areas you have for them. And again, it depends on how big of an area you're pulling the information for. You wouldn't necessarily want to just provide information as a metro level. Now, remember we talked about the difference between geographic farming and group farming, people farming, right? If you're people farming, those people could be spread all over the metro, right? And from that standpoint, they may not be in the same area, so you can't provide, market stats on their neighborhood, because if you have, 50 different neighborhoods that you're covering through your list, you're not going to spend the time to pull all that data. But if you're geographic farming, well then of course, you're going to pull the data on that specific area. So you got to take that into consideration. What other information could we send? Let's talk historically. Some of the agents in the room that have been in the business for a while. Talk to me about what things you have mailed out over your career. Come on now, don't be shy.
I've had hired someone to do my mailings for me every month, and it would have all kinds of information like what is going on in the neighborhood or surrounding areas.
So like events.
Events.
Okay, so we have events,
And recipes.
recipes, because as real estate agents, that's the #1 thing we send out. Recipes.
And when I talked with the area that I was farming, they said, "Oh, they really look forward to receiving it."
The recipes, right?
Yeah,
I know.
right. Yeah,
It-
they said,
it's-
"Please don't
it's-
stop."
It's kind of scary, right? Okay. What else? What other things have we sent out? I know people that have sent out seed packets. Seeds. I know people that have, of course, there's the time change cards, right?
Right.
Because the only way that people are going to know to set their clocks back or forward is if you mail them a postcard that says, "Don't forget, this weekend is spring forward or fall back or whatever." Or vice, whatever. I don't even remember which one's which.
You got holidays, the
Oh, the holiday cards, yes.
the seven national holidays.
Holiday cards. Things like Happy 4th of July, always good, right? There's the non-mailed things, like around the 4th of July, there's the flags, which I think are great. Although I will tell you that I've known people that have put stickers on the flags, and they get phone calls sometimes because people that are true patriots think that's offensive. So don't do that.
Put it on the stick.
Put it on the stick. Put your little sticker on the stick and then stick it in the ground. Okay. I will tell you that is one of the, having done it myself and having seen it done numerous times, it's one of the most impactful things you can do for a neighborhood. If you geographically farm, if you, and I always suggest that it should be done on Flag Day because it's Flag Day. Not many people know when that is, but it's in June. And so you can do Flag Day, put out flags on Flag Day in June, and they'll be there through the 4th of July, right? And the neighborhood, if you drive in a neighborhood that's been flagged, it's something else. And it really is kind of impressive, and it makes people kind of smile and feel good. And if you're the one that did it, who gets all that positive energy?
You do.
You do, right?
Some HOAs do it themselves.
Some HOAs do it themselves, and so in some of the, especially gated communities, you have to pay attention to what their rules are and things. And you got to be careful about, the no solicitation. I mean, there's just different rules and things. So make sure you're not violating anything by
People
doing
can't
it.
complain about it?
We've had a couple complain just because there's always going to be somebody. You have to be careful about where you put it.
Yeah.
Because most people put it next to the mailbox. Not on the mailbox, but in the ground, maybe below the mailbox. Be careful, if they have beautiful flowers or whatever, you obviously are not going to, I've had agents that have not been paying enough attention and messed up people's landscaping, and so that, of course, is going to elicit a phone call. I've had agents that have put one in when there already was one, and people were offended because they liked theirs better and they didn't want the other one, which is always kind of strange. I mean, there's always going to be somebody that has an issue, but generally, it's the one thing we get the least number of complaints on. Because it is, it's a positive feeling thing. And the key is knowing if you're in an area or your farm is in an area that somebody else does, you of course have to do it first,
Right.
which is where Flag Day comes in handy because most people wait until the week before 4th of July. So kick it in Flag Day and you'll get done before somebody else.
So you mean drive around the neighborhood and stake them.
So one of the best ways to do it, it's a great family experience, is you take your kid, if they're old enough, and you take a big bucket full of flags that have been prepared, and you and your kid walk down the street and put flags in. And you'll meet people and you'll talk to people and they'll think it's the best thing in the world. And it is, and it just spreads a smile to everyone. It's positive energy.
So the weekend before Flag Day.
Well, whatever.
Flag Day.
And keeping in mind, depending on how big of an area you're going to do, this can take some time. I mean, you can only put out so many flags an hour, and you can only do it for so many hours in a day, especially in the middle of June in Georgia, right? I mean, it's warm. So, you kind of have to take that into consideration. And most people take, a week or so to really do their whole farm if they have a decent size area, because it takes a while. So from that standpoint, all right. What else can we do? What else can we send out or provide or whatever?
Voting.
Voting information, sure. What? Voting reminders.
Don't forget to vote today.
That's right.
Speaking of,
Yep.
it is a voting day.
Yep.
What else?
Is this appropriate for a newsletter? Because a newsletter is different than a postcard, but
So let's throw newsletter over here as a separate,
okay.
and we'll come back and talk about that in a second. All right. What else? What else can you put in? Whether you put it on a postcard, email, news, whatever, whatever medium you use. But what else could you deliver that people might want to see?
What about the game schedule for the local high school?
Game schedules, sports. Sports schedules are huge. As long as you don't send out the wrong team. Right? So if you send out the Georgia schedule to an area that has mostly Georgia Tech alumni, how effective is that going to be?
It will be effective. They won't call you.
Right, it'll be very
They'll be
effective,
like,
negatively effective, but so you do have to be a little careful about the sport that you choose to support. That I've seen many things where like Georgia and Georgia Tech schedules are on the same, maybe opposite sides of a card, kind of that thing, being very politically correct. It's the same sort of thing with the voting reminders, right? You're not going to do a voting reminder in the don't forget to vote for Jim Bob today, no, that would be political support,
Yeah.
but don't forget voting day is the, exercise your right to vote kind of a thing. It's not, you've got to remember, as a realtor, you have no opinion. Okay? Because whatever opinion you have is going to offend someone and limit the possible number of clients that you can work with. That doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, obviously. You just have to be careful about how you voice it. Ranting at someone on Facebook about whatever is generally just not a good idea. And so we want to do the same thing here. We want to do everything very neutral so that we try not to offend anyone specifically. Okay? So in that line, let's think back to high school. In that line, other than sports schedules, what other schedules might there be that you might share that might be of interest to some parties but not necessarily others?
ACTs, SATs.
No, not necessarily that.
No, I'm just
What
looking
about
at you.
clothes?
What about the
Computer.
arts?
The arts?
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're going to send out the high school football schedule, why not send out their theater department or their music department schedule? Just as a thing of interest. And that kind of goes back to our event schedule, local events of all kinds that are on there. So that's kind of a good thing to mix in. What else can we, of valuable information or stuff that you've seen done in the past? We'll go with either of those and maybe come back and rate some of these. Anything else?
One of the things I've noticed that's going on in my community now is notices on the community improvements. That the city government trying to establish itself as potent has sent out notices of road improvements, sidewalk improvements,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
So that's good information. What's going on in the area. Improvements and developments, right? Because if there's a development down the street from your area that you're farming, tell people what you know about it. Find out something about it. Give them some information.
I went to like a city council meeting that I've never been to one before. Oh my goodness, those things are crazy. But
Yes,
a good way.
depending on which one.
Sandy Springs was just so long.
Uh-huh.
But you get events, things going on there.
Absolutely.
Make sure you get them right.
And you could go and you could give a summary, you know, if there's a particular event that you, or topic, I should say, that you know people are really talking about a lot in your area, you could go to, you know, and give a little summation of, hey, I was at the council meeting the other day, and they were talking about the school redistricting, and this is the information that I got out of it. Here's a link to a website for more information on it. That'd be useful,
People
right?
would like to.
People would like, because they don't want to have to go sit through the city council meeting, right?
I mean, I'd certainly rather read that, I mean, than
Then
like
sit
some
through-
seeds, you know?
Yes.
I mean, I don't want any seeds.
We're going to come back and rate which ones these are better than others. And seeds is definitely not high on the list. Although there are people that really like those. So.
Forget me nots.
Forget me nots. There you go. Throw these out. Wow. What else? There's one thing that we have completely lost and is very common in all of the kind of auto newsletter things out there. There's two things that are real estate related. Let's try to focus real estate related that are very common things that people talk about. There's stuff about moving tips
Get your house ready to sell.
and renovation tips. Or for that matter, just any house tips.
I think that was
You know,
good
like
that talks about,
Energy
like,
saving or, you know, that kind of stuff.
like the best return on value. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of interesting.
That would be very good under renovations tips.
Or
Um,
it's some kind of a tip on dealing with your home insurance.
Insurance, definitely. For instance, you could provide somebody with the information on how to go through and document all the stuff in their house. Can't remember the name of the app off the top of my head for some reason, but there's some new app that is basically that. And you go around with your camera and take pictures of all the stuff in your house, and it makes a cloud record of it so that if your house burns to the ground, you have a file of everything you've owned.
Or a tornado hits it.
Or, right, yes, other serious disasters of different kinds. Let's talk about moving tips for a second. And let's talk about this one as an example of for everything. Content is king if it is valuable, right? How often do people move?
As little as
7 years.
possible.
Right? I mean, if you had a moving tip, every single month you send out a postcard or a newsletter. Is that useful?
No.
Probably not really. Okay? Now, if you maybe had a moving guide or a moving tips sheet or something of that effect, a report on how to best move, if you would like that, you know, let me know, and you put that little teaser on any of these mediums. If somebody contacted you and said, Karen, I really would like to get your moving guide, what does that mean?
They're reading your postcard.
Moving.
They're moving. And since we buy and sell real estate, we might want to call them and say, oh, great, yes, here's the moving guide. I'd love to come out and talk to you. Are you moving soon? Or, you know,
When are you
Right?
moving?
great hot, all of a sudden goes from just drip campaign to hot lead, right? So using it that way is a good way to do those sorts of things. Renovation tips. You know, again, renovation tips are good. Use them, position them not just in, it's good to have good insulation in your home because it saves you money. But did you know that having good insulation in your home can actually increase the value of your property to a prospective buyer? Those sorts of things. You know, if you go in your attic and you can see the top of the ceiling, it's probably going to cause you an issue when you go to sell.
What have you been doing in my attic?
So, you know, I'm just saying. Again, things like house tips, all the schedules, the voting reminders, the holidays, time change, you know, those are all things that can supplement. You want your whatever it is to be interesting, right? So a newsletter, I think a newsletter and an email should basically be the same thing. One's printed, one's not. Okay? And so there might be, if you really want to hit your farm hard and try to get the most out of it that you can, you send a postcard monthly and you send a newsletter monthly. Alternate it off. Get people off the printed newsletter and your email newsletter so that they can use the hyperlinks and all that kind of stuff and watch the videos and everything. And then you're actually eliminating a piece of mail that you're having to send. But you're talking about spending money, right? I mean, sending newsletters, if you're sending a newsletter that's actually, a folded 8.5 by 11 multi whatever, however big it is, it's going to cost you money. And so you got to take into consideration what you're going to get out of it. What's the key to farming?
Consistency.
Absolutely consistency
One of the things
and patience.
one of the things that people could consider is an 8.5 by 11 newsletter, two-sided, and send it every door direct to cut the cost.
You could.
What is that?
So every door direct, we talked about every door direct last time, and it's basically you send to an entire postal route instead of addresses specifically. And so it's significantly cheaper. I think it's like 17.5 cents per piece.
But you can get
And the size of the piece can be pretty big. It can be 8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
It has to be cardstock though, doesn't it? Or if
Well,
it's
it
that
has-
big, does
the
it
weight-
not have to
The
be?
weight of the paper is what's critical.
And it's just
we
you
have
have
that
to work
paper.
through and get it to work out right. But yes, you could do a newsletter on a two-sided
Yeah.
postcard that is not really
With
what anyone would consider a postcard.
two
'Cause
columns, banner across the
big,
top,
yeah.
2 columns,
Mhm.
both sides. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could do it.
you could easily do that.
And it just
And
goes
then-
out as that
as
piece
a-
of mail?
a
It's
sheet,
not like
yeah.
an envelope?
Nope, no envelope, no
envelope,
nothing.
They
no
don't allow
They don't even have to open it.
It's beautiful.
Hmm.
I've got an example of one at my desk. You can see it.
Okay.
And so it's a great
17
opportunity.
cents? Do we know that?
17.5 cents per piece, but you have to do the whole route.
Is a route it
It
the
depends.
last 4 digits?
Yeah, it's the little 4-digit. So it just depends on how big, that particular route is. They're all,
Routes can be 300 to 900.
so you have to kind of take that into consideration. And it doesn't necessarily cover, like if you're trying to cover a neighborhood, one route might cover this part of the neighborhood, another route might cover that part of the neighborhood, and so you have to take that into consideration.
Do you have to stick them with something?
No. I'll show you.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's very simple. Talk to JP. He'll help you through the whole process because he does it a lot. So it's great because that's a very valid point. That allows us to send a newsletter in really a ridiculously oversized postcard format. But again, them not having to open it is huge, right? Because if you get something in an envelope and it's from, Bob's Real Estate or whatever, I'm not selling, whatever. Whereas if I get a newsletter that I don't have to open, no, that's great. Now, definitely on that, put a call to action to have people, get it to email. Now, then there becomes the problem. If you're using every door direct, you can't take them off your list because it's every door, period. So from that standpoint. You also can't see the seeds that way. So, but think about it.
Well, you could if they were.
You get a
Scotch tape the seeds and boxing tape on the paper.
From the standpoint of what's the purpose? We talk about that all of this information, all of the data that we provide them, all of everything that we do is designed to capture their attention. So it's got to be pretty. It's got to be valuable. It's got to be worth reading. It might be good if it was a little fun. I know people that when I used to do mine, I used to do a contest, like a trivia question about the neighborhood or about the area or about something, kind of real estate related, period, as best I could. And I would give away, I don't know, $25 gift card or gift card to Bucket Life or, some random type thing.
That's a good idea.
Why did I do that?
Because people want to learn something.
Because we want them to email me. We want them to. People will enter contests and go in, and so and then the next time around you can congratulate the person that won You know, you can, if you can get their permission, you can, you know, post it on your Facebook and connect to them and all that kind of stuff. And you can really start to leverage that as you being a part of that community, really a part of that environment. I've seen agents take that to the extreme. I saw one agent that sponsored a neighborhood lighting contest during the holidays. I will tell you that it didn't go over very well in that neighborhood. One, because that agent was relatively new to that neighborhood and didn't really know kind of what was going on. And the association, you know, kind of had their own thing, and this person completely overstepped them and tried to, you know, overshadow that. So you want to be careful not to offend other people. You want to do it in such a way that you know, go from there. You can do surveys and polls in addition or instead of trivia. You can, you know, what's your favorite street in the neighborhood? What's your, you know, and next week you'll publish your results. The favorite streets were this, this, and this, you know, and just kind of stuff that gets people involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can get them involved and interacting with you,
We're talking to each other about you. Like you said,
Exactly.
oh my God, that Karen Armstrong's not that crazy thing last week. Did you see it?
Yeah.
You know.
that's positive. That's a good thing. Because now, are they going to remember Karen Armstrong?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely they are, because they've just been talking about it. And so then the next week they're gonna wait the next month to see what crazy thing came out in her thing, so that they can talk about it and yabber about it, make fun of it, or whatever. Doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it's not bad, right?
You could sponsor sports teams from the neighborhood area,
You can.
like some team, baseball team. One of the people that are always looking for help are cheerleading squads or cheer squads from an area. If you can identify those.
There's definitely lots of opportunity for sponsorship.
It just costs a lot of money.
You can sponsor, you know, things at country clubs. You can sponsor things at, you know, charities. You can sponsor all kinds of different things. What you have to be careful of is how much money you spend doing all of that, and how really effective it is. How much exposure do you really get from it? For instance, there are a lot of high schools that will let you sponsor ads in the yearbook. Might cost you $500 for a full-page ad. Might cost you more than that for some schools.
But you don't get
How
it.
effective is that?
In 20 years, when they're looking back at their
Right. And when their 10-year reunion comes around and they pull out their yearbook to look at it again for the first time in 10 years, you know, or the only people that are looking at the yearbook are, you know, people graduating from high school who aren't going to be buying a house. Or,
One of the things that
you
is
know,
effective, though, is elementary school sponsorships with things like contributions to programs, and your name goes up on a banner in the gymnasium, say for example, or outside on the logo, or on the great sign out in front of the school, you know, thanks to Coldwell Bank or whatever. You can sponsor an elementary school.
Ken, I know an agent that used to do the newsletter for an elementary school. They printed it, and part of that printing, they put a little blurb at the bottom that said "courtesy of so and so." And the other agents that had kids that went to that school could not wait for her to go away. Well, unfortunately, shortly after she went away, that school newsletter went digital, and there was no more sponsorship opportunity. So whatever. But I'll tell you a personal story. So I sponsored the auction at my kid's school when I was an agent. Big banner on the back of the stage. I mean, full size, you know, like major money sponsorship. Private school thought, you know, this is an opportunity for me to get some clients, right? Sponsored the auction. Later that year, I was talking to the head of school as she was retiring, and she says, "Oh, I didn't know you were in real estate."
Good.
Right? Because I know you were at the auction. You didn't see the banner. Never mind. So you got to be careful. Stuff is not as effective as you think it is. Okay? It's not about, and that's the issue with sponsorship things. A lot of sponsorship opportunities are boom, and that's it. Well, that's great if you're doing a bunch of other stuff to supplement that because it helps magnify this stuff.
Yes, consistency.
But it just adds to it. But if all you do is the boom and it goes away, well, you miss 90% of the people. So if you do a sponsorship, for instance, like of a local swim team, I know agents that sponsor swim teams. I know swim teams that have multiple agents sponsoring them. And so their logos, you know, and information get on the back of the T-shirt. Well, the T-shirt is a great place to be, right? Because how long does a T-shirt hang around? Forever, right? I mean, kids wear them, and they see them around the pool, and you see them at the thing, and the banners, and most of the time, you know, I know at our club, they announce, at every spring meet, they announce all the sponsors, and, you know, I mean, it's repetitive. It's multiple things. And so you just have to look for how effective is what you're going to spend, is it going to be, okay? And that's the reality. But things like sponsorships, there's no content, right? So you can't show value. It's just a supplemental pop to help your presence and recognition. So you have to take into consideration that if you can get content in front of them, it is significantly better than if you are just doing a pop. Think about it from this perspective. At your civic association or your neighborhood association, is there someone that does a real estate report at your meetings? Is there someone that stands up at the meeting and gives a report on what has happened in the area covered by this association since the last meeting relative to real estate? Some there is, some there isn't. I mean, I know I've said over and over again, in my neighborhood I have like 40 agents. One of them is like second or third generation real estate. And he is the one that's on the Civic Association board with me. And he gets to do the presentation because he always has. He has for years. He's been there, you know, as long as I've been alive. So he kind of cheats. He has the upper hand. But what's funny, and you can see the impact of these things, is this guy, who I love dearly, he's a great guy, good agent, knows what he's talking about, been in the business for a long time. He brings a whiteboard, and he writes the stats. And so 2007, and 2008, 2009, 10, and so on and so on. Solds and listings and average sales price and all the stuff's out on a big whiteboard. A couple of meetings ago, he was creative and he left the data for that year blank, and he filled it in as we went, and you know, kind of made a kind of production of it, which was interesting. So at the last meeting, which was a few weeks ago, I walk in the clubhouse to go to the meeting, and he's setting up a projector up front. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You know, like, that's so not in your comfort zone. I know that is not his comfort zone. What are you doing? He says, well, I'm having to keep up because, you know, you're pressuring me here. Like, I'm not pressuring you. You know, you do your thing. So he got his little projector set up and everything, the laptop and all set up. And then he walked behind the screen. He pulled out his whiteboard and all this stuff on it. And then he showed pictures of things. And it was funny. But, I mean, you can be that person. And you can be, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, you know, a PowerPoint presentation, because nobody necessarily wants that. But give the information. You could print up little sheets. I don't know why he doesn't hand out sheets personally. I would do it if that's what I was doing. I'd have little printed up sheets that I gave out that had my name on it. But he doesn't do that because everybody knows who he is anyway. I mean, when he talks, it's Rob Holly. But it's funny because he talks about in the neighborhood, when he talks about a house. So like one of the things he did is he pulled up the recent sales, and so for the year. And so when he pulls up a house, he doesn't talk about the house, you know, this is 123 Leafmore, and, you know, it's sold for such and such, and just read the information off. He says, yeah, you know, that used to be the Thomas's house, and then the Moores lived that before, and I was on a swim team with Jimmy, and, I mean, it's this whole, you know, history lesson on this particular house, because he's lived in the neighborhood. I mean, like I said, he lives in his mom's house, which is common in our neighborhood. People live in their parents' house. They come back. And so, you know.
What do with the parents?
They're different options. But, you know, from that standpoint, you could be the person that gives that information. look for those opportunities to deliver content. Because when you deliver content, you deliver value. When you deliver value, people see a reason to want to be in touch with you and want to pay attention to what you say and know who you are, right? And if you can do that real estate related, then you can build people that will give you business. Any questions about content? All right, so here's a question. Last time we talked all about all these different mediums and different things for farming. This time we talked about the content. Is there anything else about farming that we need to talk about?
So you know what area you're going to do. You know you need to do something at least once a month.
We pretty much covered it all, right? Last time we really talked a lot about how to find the area. We talked a lot about the different ways that you can reach out to people. And this time we talked
Did y'all
about
talk
what
about
to
like
eat.
how it's probably better to do a more manageable number, but do it more frequently?
We did. We talked about size versus
Yeah.
manageable size.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the ability to, when you pick your area, look for an area that you can maybe expand, because as you get more income and have more ability to cover a broader area, those sorts of things. More contact, more frequency is better. Honestly, the alternating every 2 weeks thing, if you do, like one of our systems here that we use or have worked with is Home Actions Report, right? It mails out every 2 weeks to your database. Every 2 weeks it writes new content and mails out to your database. Every 2 weeks. Some people say, oh, that's too frequent, that's too often, people are going to get annoyed. Not if it's valuable.
So what is
If the
this?
content is valuable, that's not too often.
That's the thing we get from you.
It's Home Actions Report. No,
It's from you.
it's from, I mean, it's a company.
You send one out.
I do send one out, yes. That I have a Home Actions account that sends out to all of you guys.
We know.
And you get it every 2 weeks, don't you? You should.
Yeah.
One of the things that I signed up for was the thank you account, where they send out coupons and stuff to people.
Is that the Life in a Box thing, or is that
No,
a different?
no, it's not. It's just a thank you,
Uh-huh.
and basically you put their name and email address in and their zip code, and then it sends them coupons, meaningful stuff. Because honest to God, I've had people call me or
Thank you.
have talked to me on the street and said, JP, because they got free access to AMC theaters for one weekend or something like
Okay.
that.
Is that through Home Actions?
No.
No, it's not through
No,
Home Actions.
that's not
It's
Home
totally-
I missed that part. too.
Yeah.
It's called Thank You,
How much does it
Thank-
cost?
like $200 a year.
And how many people can get it?
Oh, I uploaded 1,700 email addresses.
So that's a lot.
God.
That's a good one. See, and the thing
But
is
the
that
nice thing about it is that it's people-centered, not
the
necessarily
areas
geographic, because you put their zip code in and then they get a coupon to be able
specific
use
to
it in
their area.
area.
Right. And the thing is, so there's 1,000 different tools out there. I mean, we as Coldwell Banker have, our e-card system and all our e-marketing stuff that you can use. This effort is going to cost you one of two or both things, time or money, right? The more money you spend, probably the less time you have to put into it. And so there are people that love that aspect, right? And then there are people that don't have the money, and so they spend the time. And so, when I first started farming an area as an agent, I had my postcards, and we printed them up, and, just like here, you can print them up here. But I hand-delivered them. And I hand-delivered them as I went street by street through my farming area and did my survey, verified my addresses, and verified all the information so that I had that information to be correct. And so my farm grew every time I went out because I only mailed to the people I had already visited. Because I would give them this month's thing, and then next month I would mail it to them. So every month, every time I walked, I got more people. All right, it's chirping. I think that means we're done, right?
No, it means you got a Google reminder.
Well, it must mean we're done. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for coming.
You're welcome.